Chief Minister, Leader of the Opposition, Mr. President, Ministers, friends, I've sat where you're sitting for many, many years, and I still find it hard to believe that I'm standing here and you're sitting there. Never use the words, never say never, because at the end of the day, I always said I never would, and here I am. I'd like to deal, if I may, first with a number of the points that have been raised from my colleagues, and one from the question. The question of the power station, I think, was the first question that any of the guests raised this evening. It's important to remember that a power station takes 2 to 3 years to build. But the problem we have is not just with the power station, it's also with the grid that is in the state of almost collapse. I don't play party politics too much, but when things have to be said, they have to be said. When you're in government for 16 years and you haven't signed an agreement or provided for power, which is a very, as Nick absolutely rightly said, a very basic and simple necessity of every single business, something's gone wrong somewhere. And what this government did when they came in was immediately review what was there, because it was almost ready to be signed, and came to the conclusion that was it good for JIP to enter into a system that was diesel generated for 30 years to come, with a 5% increase in the cost of fuel to the consumer every year for the next 20 years. The view they took was, no, it wasn't a good deal for Gibraltar or its people, and consequently they stopped it. Didn't sign, looked at alternatives. There have to be cleaner ways of producing power. We have EU obligations as to what amount of power we have to regenerate from non-fossil fuels power generation. So, in my view, that decision was right. But of course, the problem we had couldn't be left where it was. So power, alternative power, was brought in, and the temporary supply is at North Mole. We still have power cuts. It's not because the power isn't there, it's because the grid is almost collapsed. So it's almost a double whammy which needs to be dealt with, and dealt with quickly. The future job strategy. I would like to have a strategy in place that helps our young people to get some experience, to get some understanding of what work is, and to get some support on the way. And that's exactly what the future job strategy is. The GSD, and Marlene's referred to it this evening, they call it the failed strategy. Well, for goodness sake, if you were in government for 16 years, and these guys have been in for 18 months, give it a chance and wish it well at least. But to call it from day one a failed strategy, in my view, is at best unkind. And the results of this failed strategy are, quite simply, that in the first 12 months, from October 2011 to October 2012, the number of Gibraltarians in employment has increased, and by that I mean Gibraltarian residents, has increased by 524. Simple number to remember. And for each of the last 16 years, the number of Gibraltarians extra, again Gibraltarian residents, I apologise, in jobs increased by an average of 22 per year. So if that's a failed job strategy, I quite like it. The second aspect of the job strategy runs parallel to what's called a graduate scheme. Those are kids that come back from university as graduates and can't find employment. Why on earth shouldn't the government support those people? What on earth is wrong with that? And what the government is doing with the graduates is taking them into their own positions. It's interesting because one of the graduates was involved in the design of the access at Catalan Bay for disabled users of the beach. So I don't quite see this sitting at home and getting paid or dead-end jobs. It's actually giving our young people an opportunity to get some experience in work. Because when they turn up in your places to work and they say, I've got a degree in history, what can I do with no experience? You're going to think, why am I going to train them on these going to somewhere else? So isn't it sensible and logical and good for our young people that we give them the opportunity to have some training and pay them in the process? I see absolutely nothing wrong with that. The job strategy, first aspect, which is through the company that employs kids and then places them in private employment, is a very simple scheme. The company is subscribed, the individual is sent. After 1 month, the company decides if it wants to keep them. If it keeps them, from then onwards, they're still paid by government until the end of the 11-month period, and then if they don't take them on, they've got to pay the money back to government. But what's happening? over 100 people in January, I haven't seen the latest numbers, have found permanent jobs in the private sector through that scheme. The scheme is working. How on earth can you call it a failed strategy when the scheme is working? For me, it's an absolute no-brainer. If we are finding 10 jobs, 20 jobs, it's not costing us any money, because once we're in the private sector takes on the obligation. The economy. You had a budget on Monday where you were told that what has to go up is going up and what has to come down is going down. Pretty simple. Most of us can understand that. So a GDP of almost 8%, record budget surplus, debt, whether it's gross or net, both down, one by 30%, one by 10%. But if you are slightly caught in doubt, then what I would invite you to do tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock is plug in your radios or watch TV and watch the Chief Minister's response, where he will deal with all of these things. And then I hope that he puts it beyond any doubt as to what the reality and the truth is, not just about the economy now, but what it was in December 2011. You are the private sector, the engine of our economy. At the end of the day, it's up to you to make Gibraltar tick. And when you consider, in reality, the importance of that in a small community, it's amplified. A lot of the burden falls on you. And what this government has been doing with you, and indeed with everyone else, is looking at the issues that concern you and that you need assistance on. By that I mean, previously we had, and I know many of you will recognise this, a sort of presidential style of government where decisions came primarily from number 6. Legislation, queries, applications, permits, all went through number 6. What you have today actually is a very, very different system. You have cabinet government, what I call consensus government. You have people that work together as teams. So if you look at the Catalan Bay example, you've got the Minister for Tourism, Neil Costa, who's with us here tonight, and the Minister for Social Services, Samantha Sacramento, also with us tonight, who worked together to deliver a project that didn't just improve the beaches, but gave access to people with reduced mobility to have a swim. It's not very difficult, really, is it? 16 years. People who are disabled or don't have access to the beaches because of their disabilities haven't been able to have a swim in Catalan Bay, haven't been able to have a swim in Sandy Bay. Eastern Beach, there was a temporary facility housed with 2 people from the care agency. Lifeguards have been trained to assist people using those facilities so that they're on the beach anyway while we use them to help to provide the service. It's simple things like that where it's not just it's your ministry's problem. Ministers are working together. Cabinet meets every Monday. There's consensus politics. That's got to be good for the private sector, and that's got to be good for Gibraltar. I've worked all my life in commerce. I've worked with many of you, mostly for you, and some of you against you. But that experience of working with you, understanding what your needs are, understanding what the commerce or the commercial sector requires, in every aspect of your businesses, I believe gives me an enormous experience. And Nick, although he's a bit younger and he gets up earlier than I do, will understand. There aren't many issues that we don't understand about your needs and your interests. But I think above all else, what you people really, really want is somebody who's going to listen to you, somebody who's going to engage you, somebody who's going to consult with you. And that, for the first time in a long, long time, is what you have today. Whatever department you have. Again, if I can just use one quick example of Samantha's.
1 minute.
1 minute. Ooh, no, I won't. Excuse me. I'd just like to touch my last minute on 2 things that I think are crucially important. This is an election, and I'm very grateful to you, Mr. President, for the 1 minute silence for Charles Besson. I think everyone here will acknowledge what a wonderful man he was and what a loss he's been to Gibraltar. This is an election which really is for a government seat. I know my colleagues don't like me saying that, but the truth of the matter is it is. Which one of you in running your businesses would like to lose one of your key men? How would your business be able to continue losing a key man? The Chief Minister has lost one of his pairs of hands. And if you are serious about putting Gibraltar first, if you're serious about making a positive and responsible contribution to politics, there can only be one, in my view, and perhaps I'm biased, choice to that.
Your time's up. I'm sorry.
And that is vote for somebody who'll work for you. Thank you.